but we are here for the Daily African Proverbs, and I'm really excited for today's episode. My name is Simon Javan Okelo. I am the host of the African Father in America podcast, and I have a really special guest that is going to be joining me for today's episode. She's joining me from the port of Seattle. My special guest is Guadalupe Torres, and we are going to talk about an African proverb from Ghana, and we're also going to talk about an incredible opportunity that has been presented to our community, especially in the South King County area of Seattle. This is a great funding opportunity that we are going to learn more about. But as usual, we normally start our episodes here with an African proverb, and I brought a beautiful one for you from Ghana. It says that the rain wets the leopard's spots but does not wash them. The rain wets the leopard's spots but does not wash them. This is a beautiful proverb, and my team and I prepared for you just a few nuggets that you can note down that were inspired by this proverb. A few things you can learn from this African proverb. And then we are going to learn what Guadalupe thinks about this African proverb. I love bringing our friends who are from other cultures, because wisdom is in every culture, and I feel that it's always exciting to hear what people who are not really from Africa but are engaging and living and coexisting with African people, what they think of these incredible proverbs. So the first nugget says that, and this is in as an interpretation of today's proverb from Ghana. Again, the proverb says, the rain wets the leopard's spots but does not wash them. So the first nugget of wisdom here is that just because you are stained doesn't mean you can't clean up and shine. And then number 2 says that don't let your past dictate your present or your future. And then number 3, no matter how tough things seem, always keep your head up and press on. And this is really something that I feel is very connected to today's proverb. Today's discussion is about funding, and this African proverb seems to be, speaking to the idea of always keep moving, always keep trying. And sometimes it's hard for you to even try if you don't have an opportunity or an organization that supports your idea. So that's part of why I'm excited to have you here, Guadalupe. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me this morning.
Wonderful. I just appreciate you for waking up so early in the morning to be here for the daily. We call this show the Daily African Proverbs, because for the last 2+ years we've been collecting African proverbs, especially through the pandemic. People are going through a very rough time, and African proverbs are one of the ways that me as an African, I found it as a way for me to think about my ancestors, think about, how do I deal with the current challenge caused by the pandemic, the economic challenges, the mental health challenges. How do I deal with them? And I found this as a place of solace, sharing them with people, podcasting about them has been something that is healing for me. And I found that a lot of my community members globally really appreciate it. So, first of all, our motivation for today's conversation is really because we want to talk about a funding opportunity for the African community, especially and also the BIPOC community members in the South King County area. So I know that many people who are watching today are really keen on that. But first, I want to give a shout out to Siliana Consulting, Nyambura. Nyambura is the CEO of Siliana Consulting, and also we have Fadu Mohammed and One Vibe Media, which produces the African Father in America podcast, is partnering with Siliana Consulting, and we are really proud of the work that we are doing in collaboration with the Port of Seattle, Guadalupe, Andy, your team, and the entire community of people we've met that work with the port really excite us about, what's possible through the Port of Seattle and how we can continue improving our communities, really in partnership with you all. So with those few words, I want you to pay attention. We are going to be sharing information on how you can get this grant, and also how you can learn more about other grant opportunities that the Port of Seattle has available for you. So Guadalupe, go ahead and share with us just briefly, when you hear this proverb from Ghana, the rain wets the leopard spots but does not wash them. What is it that comes to your mind?
I think your point about resiliency is really powerful. It touched my heart because it took me to a place of being. I grew up in middle of the United States, Nebraska, and my family worked in the fields. We were migrant farm workers, and one of the I loved the rain when it rained because it cooled everything down. But I was thinking about the lessons. There's so much truth in what you say around our ancestors and their wisdom and their history and passing it down. And one thing that the field work was very hard, but it also was a blessing because I got to be with my family and working in the fields with my family. And a lot of the women in my family, like my aunts, my tias, and myself, my mother. And as we worked the fields, they would talk to us and they would say, important life lessons. And one of them was watching my mother. Actually, when she would work in the fields, she would, you work a hoe and you cleaned the row of beets. That's what we worked in. And she would jump into the next row and she would start cleaning it. And she would jump into the next row and start cleaning it. Then she would go back to her row and clean it. And the lesson there was that there are times in life when others can't, they're not keeping up, or they're struggling a little bit, they're a bit behind. And when you are able to jump into somebody's row, you do that in life. And I think that's so powerful because that is a gift, a life lesson. So jump into that row when you can. And so how that connects to funding is that I think that show the opportunity, provide the opportunity so that others may take that path, and it could lead to much better goodness and much larger goodness. So that's really what came to my heart, the point of resiliency and not giving up and moving forward. And yes, the rain comes down, but you persevere.
Yeah, perseverance is the key word there, and I feel that through partnerships, through collaboration. In Kenya, we have this thing called the spirit of Harambee, the spirit of working together, and that's what really came up for me as you're describing the hardship of farming and how your mom used to help, and and how we could all do the same, go into other people's row and just help a little bit. I just really appreciate that. If you're just joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Simon Okello. I'm the host of the African Father in America podcast, and my special guest today is Guadalupe Torres, who is the community investment manager at the Port of Seattle. And today we are going to learn a little more about the economic development, the economic recovery program. This is a grant opportunity, and it's really important that you learn more about it. I want you to stay put, but I want you to know that if you want to learn more, I'm going to put a link here, an email address. For if you have any questions, you can email Amira. I'm going to add it in the live stream right now. So just take a look at my screen, and you'll be able to email Amira, and she will be able to support you. And also in a moment, I'm going to share a link where you can learn more. And also after this show, in the chat, in the comments, I'm going to add the same link to the location where through the port of the website of the Port of Seattle. That's www.portseattle.org. If you go to the website and just put /programs/South King County Community Impact Fund Economic Recovery Program, you'll get it. But really, I'm adding it. We really want you to get this funding. And also what's amazing is that we have community members who are leading initiatives, particularly to help ensure that you get this funding. That long, web page that I was describing is also now there for you to take a look at. Guadalupe, one of the things I love asking every guest that I host for the African Father in America podcast are, a childhood story that inspires who you are today as a leader. You're doing incredible work ensuring that African organizations, Latino-led organizations, indigenous-led organizations in the South King County area get the funding that they need to recover from the economic challenges that are not only presented to us by the recent pandemic that we are not even out of, but it's also presented to us by the current war in Ukraine. So, I want you to think about, you already gave us an hint as to what is it that inspired, who you are today. But I want to share a story for me. When I was around 8 years old, my mother gave me a bicycle. And this bicycle had a tiny wheel at the front and a big wheel at the back, and it was for carrying a lot of cargo. So every morning before school, I would distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood, and that's how I connected with business people back in Kenya before I ever moved to Seattle. And now I'm deeply involved with so many things in Seattle, and it's the same spirit, the same discipline that I learned as a 8-year-old that I bring to even the partnership through Ciliana Consulting and the port, So I want you to share your own story of something that happened around when you are 8, 12, that really inspires who you are today as an incredible leader that we are celebrating today.
Oh, thank you. I guess, what I'm thinking about is watching my mother and my aunts again. Really, they were entrepreneurs. They would get up in the morning like this, way earlier, and they would make food to take in their car to sell at the meat packing plant that was down the street, and lots of immigrant workers there. And they would sell burritos, and it gave me an understanding of like what entrepreneurship is. And I think that in so many immigrant communities, we hustle, man. We make it happen. And they saw an opportunity. People need to eat in the morning. So we get up, we make good breakfast, we sell our burritos for 50 cents, and then we make money too. So I think of like, that's just something that was the lesson there for me was like, get up, think about where there's opportunity and go for it and just make it happen. That's entrepreneurship. And so I think that I find that in almost every immigrant community, they're ready to work, ready to figure it out. And that's such a common thread, like just hustle in a good way,
I love that. Yeah, the spirit of hustling and fighting, and finding ways to collaborate, because even in the process of hustling and finding ways to thrive, whether you're here in Seattle, we are primarily today, we are really highlighting what's going on in South King County communities here in Seattle, especially the communities that are around the Port of Seattle. And this is because, the Port of Seattle is really a place that everybody has to go to. For me, I went through the Port of Seattle while arriving in Seattle. This Wednesday, I'm taking a guest to the Port of Seattle who is traveling back to the motherland. And whenever we have Madaraka Festival, that this August attracted over 7,000 people. I go to the airport maybe 7 times in like 3 days. So I feel that it's such a strong part of our community that I just feel privileged to be involved with. But you, Guadalupe, you work with the Port of Seattle, and as a person of color, I feel that that's also a privilege, and your story that you've shared with us really, tells how you've traveled your journey to where you are today as the community investments manager at the Port of Seattle. But currently, you are working on an amazing opportunity for organizations and other community initiatives that can have access to fiscal sponsors that can allow them to position themselves to apply. I just want you to take your time and break it down for us. Why is this important for you and the Port of Seattle, and really break it down for us. What is this, economic recovery funding for South King County? And also, where can people go? How can people access this funding, and by when?
Oh, thank you. Simon, it really is a wonderful opportunity. It is in 2019, the Port of Seattle allocated $10 million to be invested in the community. And so the pandemic happened in 2020. So just as the money was, the allocation was approved and things were getting started, the pandemic hit. And so the port recognized that those impacted most by the pandemic were many of our communities in South King County. And the objective of the fund was to that those investments be made in communities of color that have ideas about how to bring economic recovery to their people, their ideas. And so that's how it began. And that was there's been two allocations of funding to date. So we've invested about almost $5 million in economic recovery. And we also, so in that $10 million, a portion was for economic recovery, the biggest portion. There was another portion for environmental impact. So organizations doing work with the environment, creating green jobs, addressing environmental justice concerns. There was the second bucket. And then the third bucket, which was the smallest bucket, was for WIMBY, Women Minority Business Owned Enterprise, and small business development. They have other funding. That's why that smaller pot was available in monies, but they have other funding. The other two programs, these are new, and these are really trying to connect, engage with community, and let them know that the port respects them, is listening, and wants to invest in their good ideas for recovery in their communities. And I think to the point about, we have the best ideas for our communities. If we live there, we go to school there, we work there, we connect there. Really listening to those leaders, listening to the people, really, and what's most important to them in their communities. And so we have funded, I think to date, we've funded 22 economic recovery programs, and we've funded, I don't have the exact number of environmental, but it's at least 30 environmental programs. And those are really cool because they could be things that impact the community. So like park restoration, basketball fields, things that the community would benefit from. And so there's wonderful projects, and I can talk about a little bit about, some of the groups that we have funded, if you like. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. That is, it's an amount that's allocated for the community, but for community-led projects. So that means it is it's stemming from the community. They have identified it as a need, and um, and can build on that idea and that vision.
Thank you so much. For those who are joining us, we're just having an incredible conversation here. We started by talking about an amazing African proverb, and now we are learning a little bit more about the South King County Community Investment Fund. This is a great grant opportunity, and we have some key dates, Guadalupe, that I wanted you to touch on. Some deadlines. Typically with grant opportunities like this, you need to just be aware of, when is the deadline to submit the grant, but also speak to some of the resources. Somebody might be watching this and they're in the South King County community here in the Seattle area, but they don't know whether they qualify for this grant. They don't know whether there are resources available to help them even apply. Could you speak to that briefly?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you, Simon, because the deadline is coming up really fast. It's actually on Thursday. So I encourage you to please go to the website and check it out. And with economic recovery, it is a two-step application process. So the first step is pretty simple. It's 3 questions. Those are due by Thursday, end of day. And they speak to 3 areas. One is that, where will this work be done? Our focus is South King County. So that is what we're looking for, communities doing work in South King County. The second is, who will benefit from your work, from your project? And we have identified communities of color, those communities with the biggest challenges. So, for example, BIPOC communities, veterans, LGBTQ, who else? Seniors. There's a list, and if your project will assist or will aim to improve the lives of multiple groups, then please, include that in your response. And then the third question will be around, how will this be port related? And so we're talking about economic recovery, so we're talking about jobs, really. And how will these jobs connect to the port's work? So at the airport, and the way that the term we use is port related industries. And those industries are the airport jobs, construction jobs, green jobs, and green careers. So anything in the environmental green sector jobs, and then maritime jobs that have to do with being on the water, on the boats. It's trades, and really thinking about people that connect with any of those four areas. How will your project connect to those? So those are the 3 questions. They're due Thursday. Please reach out if you have any questions, because in my mind, I'm like, why not try? Like, it's a pretty simple application, maximum 2 pages. So it's an investment of probably a good hour of your time, an hour and a half, to think through and answer 3 questions. And then the next process would be, if you are deemed eligible, then you would move forward with a full RFP application.
Yeah, this is incredible, Guadalupe. I'm just so excited. I can't apply. I can't apply for this grant opportunity because I am part of the Ciliana consulting team who are helping the Port of Seattle. Strengthen its community, its relationship with our community, but really to help community members access this funding. You spoke about $10 million that the Port of Seattle put aside for community projects in the environment, in the environmental protection area, and also in the economic recovery area, right?
Yes, and then the small business development, those three areas. But Simon, I wanted to make sure people knew how much this was, the funding. So there's a couple of options when people apply for this funding, and it's up to $250,000. So it's $250,000 investment in a community project. And the way that would work would be for 250,000, you could choose 2 to 3 years for that money to be distributed over 2 to 3 years. The other option is that it could be a smaller amount. So the least is 100,000, the most is 250,000, 100,000 for 1 year, or 250,000 over 2 or 3 years. It depends on the project and it depends on the needs of the organization. But it really is a fabulous opportunity, especially the multi-year, because that brings more stability to the organizations. In my past life, I've been an executive director a few times, and so I'm familiar with the cycle of a nonprofit and the importance and significance of multi-year giving. It's something that you can build into your budgets and build a growth of this idea. And so this was a really important component that the port wanted to offer to community, to say further convey our desire and our belief that your idea is good and should be invested over multiple years.
Wow, Guadalupe, you're making me passionate about working for a government institution again because, for a long time, people have always said that, government institutions like the port are so removed from the community. But having a leader like you who has been in the nonprofit world for such a long time. I'm the founder and executive director of One Vibe Africa, which is a nonprofit organization. So as you are speaking, I can completely relate to what you're saying when it comes to having multi-year funding, and the fact that the Port of Seattle is currently making 100,000 to 250,000 available for organizations. Are businesses qualified to apply for this funding too?
That's a really good question, Simon, because we did, and this is something I should say too. This year we removed the requirement of it being, before you had to be a 501c3 or a 501c, I think it's 4 or 6. You had to be one. You had to have the certification. It is no longer the case. You do not need to have that in place. So the question about, can a for-profit apply? Technically, they could. The heart, the purpose of this money is to go back to community. So it would just have to be really focused on, how is this going to touch the community? How will the community benefit? And the intentionality was to put that investment back into the people.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. For everyone who is just joining us, my name is Simon Okello. I am the host of the African Father in America podcast, and my guest today is the Community Investment Manager for the Port of Seattle, Guadalupe Torres, who is also deeply involved with managing an incredible funding opportunity for non-profit organizations as well as businesses that qualify and are doing great work in the community. This is the South King County Community Impact Fund for Economic Recovery Program. And I want you to know that if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to add, the area where you can learn more and get more information. You can actually connect with Amira Beasley, who is an incredible colleague of Guadalupe. I have met Amira in person. I just added her email address in the chat. It's currently on the screen on YouTube. And also, I am going to add a link in the chat on YouTube, and I think it's in the chat on Clubhouse as well. So I see another community leader from Seattle in the audience. I want to see if Jay just wants to join us briefly. But I want to thank you for taking your time, Guadalupe, to join us for today's conversation. At the beginning of the show today, I was just speaking to why it's really important that the Port of Seattle continues working with people like you, working with people like Elise that I am hosting this Thursday, so that we could learn more about the environmental grant that also the Port of Seattle is providing. And, long before I became a part of, Ciliana Consulting that the Port is partnering with, and also, One Vibe Media is involved with this, through Ciliana Consulting, and One Vibe Media produces this podcast. So our involvement is so complex, but One Vibe Media is the producer of the African Father in America podcast. But long before I was doing all of these things, I was also applying for grants like this. And one of the grants that I benefited from was, given to a youth group in the South King County area, where I was able to help them produce a documentary about the environmental degradation of the Duwamish River. And, as an African immigrant who had not lived here in the US for such a long time, I didn't know that there's actually environmental issues here that need to be addressed. And so for this kind of funding to be available, for even youths like the ones I worked with to continue doing their work, I think is really, really incredible. So if you're watching, I want you to pay attention to Guadalupe in a moment. Guadalupe is going to share with you how you can stay connected with, what the port is doing in general, and also how you can stay connected with her, and some of the next steps in regards to this funding opportunity. But for now, I just quickly want to give space to some of our guests to make a few comments on the proverb, and also just to, make a few comments on our special guest today. So I'll go quickly to Lavender, who is here, and then Kesiwa, and then Jay, and then we'll wrap up the show with you, Guadalupe, just sharing with us, also, again, how we can stay connected and how we can, stay connected, especially with the grant opportunities at the port. Lavender, how are you doing? Where are you joining us from? And what are your thoughts on the proverb and our conversation today?
Hi, Simon. This is Lavender. I'm joining from Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much, Guadalupe, for this opportunity and the work you're doing with the Port of Seattle. I'm sure many of us appreciate chances like this and opportunities like this. And I won't take much time. I'll let most of our audiences, I can see Jared, Kay, brother on here, and I'd like to hear from them as well. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you so much, Lavender. We'll go quickly just to Kesiwa. Kesiwa, how are you? Where are you joining us from? And what are your thoughts on today's proverb and any comments on this funding opportunity?
Hello. I'm speaking from Lancaster, in California. I think this is a really amazing initiative for a city official to be on here to share about this incredible news. I more grease to your elbows, and I just really hope other communities around the world follow this model. I hope you're able to get um, many people that apply for this grant, and because hey, if we don't care about the environment, who will, right? And my thoughts on this proverb: the rain wets the leopard spots, but does not wash them. I mean, it really ties beautifully with the purpose of this particular grant. Sometimes we can look at an environment and think, oh, it's just so serene, but then you learn about maybe what some of the community members are suffering from, like an ailment of some kind, or there's some, it's not everything that you can see with the naked eye, right? So, in connection to this proverb, I think it really fits very well, because uh, it's important that we do our part, whatever little part that we can do in our own way. And if there's a huge initiative like that, encouraging corporate companies to have a bigger role to play and that they will get help, awesome. This is a little bit that I can share, and this guess when I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Kesiwa. Let's hear from Jay briefly, and then we'll continue on. I see that Stella joined us here. So, Jay, how are you? Where are you joining us from? And what are your thoughts and comments, either on the proverb or on this funding opportunity and our special guest today?
Good morning, Pacific Standard Time, out of Seattle. I didn't hear the special guest. I will definitely listen to the replay.
Oh, I should tell you, Jay, because you are someone who needs to know this. I'm hosting I don't know, you're on Clubhouse, so you can't see, but my guest is the Community Investment Manager at the Port of Seattle, Guadalupe Torres. And there's a great funding opportunity that the Port of Seattle has for community organizations, nonprofit organizations specifically, but also, businesses, for profit organizations that have fiscal sponsors and are doing great work in the community, that need the funding through the Economic Recovery Fund, which is 100,000 to 250,000 funding available. And the deadline is this Thursday. But there's more funding that she also spoke about.
I do know about some of the funding, but I'm going to say this really quick because I know you want to move through it. It's fabulous that you were able to get Guadalupe on to speak. But I also wanted to say, Simon, for the very brief period of time that you have been in Seattle, you are like a leopard that has not changed its spot. So I know people have heard the saying that in life, a little rain must fall. But if you are consistent, you know who you are, you know what you want, you are focused, you are determined, you're talented, you're skilled, you're capable, you're not easily sidetracked, then even though that rain falls and sometimes it even comes down in torrents, your spots in terms of what your intentions are do not change. And so I see that in you, Simon. I'm just going to use that as a quick example. There's so many others that you are active, very, very active in the Seattle community and are outlining areas. It's mind-boggling to me, the things you find out, what you know, what you're active in. So that it's amazing to me. And of course, you're amazing to so many others as well, but it is with intent. So it just doesn't happen by chance. You are focused. So anyway, that's what I want to say about the leopard. I will, I'm always looking for grant opportunities that will work for what I do. So it always depends on what you do and how you apply yourself. And if a particular grant, even if you tweak it a little bit, if a particular grant certainly works in the field and in the area that you excel at. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, Jay. I deeply appreciate your time, and I really hope that you help me spread the word, because I really want people to get this funding, and so that we can have more Simons, Anyway, let's hear from Stella briefly, and then we'll close our session by just hearing a little more from Guadalupe, who is my special guest today. Hey, Stella, how are you? What are your thoughts on the proverb and the current conversation with Guadalupe?
Hello, Simon. Hi, everyone. Uh, I'm really glad that this show is happening today because it's a true example that you should just keep doing what you're doing. Someone is watching. And that's my brief comment. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Stella. I deeply appreciate your continued support. Stella and Lavender are part of my team at One Vibe Media. So if you want to be a guest on the show, you can connect with one of them. And I want to come back to my special guest, Guadalupe. I really, really thank you for taking your time, especially this early in the morning. And I want you to just say anything that any one of our contributors said that inspired you, and then speak to, how can we stay connected with you and the Port of Seattle. But finally, if there's anything I didn't ask that you want to add, this is a good time for you to also share it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Simon, and thank you. Good morning to everyone. I feel so honored, really, to be here because I feel the community. I feel the connection. We are in community, and so much gratitude. Like I'm just feeling, that's my overwhelming feeling right now. Like I'm so grateful, and I'm also grateful for our wonderful partners who have benefited from this program, and I wanted to just give them a shout out because they're doing amazing work, and there's so many beautiful, powerful nonprofits in our area, South King County and otherwise, that are doing important work. And just want to note that some of these that we've funded in the past include the African Community Housing and Development um, Organization, the Businesses Ending Slavery and Trafficking, BEST, CARES of Washington, El Centro de la Raza, Partners in Employment, Washington Maritime Blue. We have an organization called AJAC, Key Tech Labs in Normandy Park, Latino Civic Alliance, Neighborhood Housing, Aviation Technology Pathways, the Evergreen Seattle Goodwill, and World Relief Seattle. Those are just some of the organizations in Cycle 2 that have been funded and are doing wonderful work with their programs and their projects. And I hope that there will be others that will be able to shout out as the applications come in. And I just encourage you to think about this, to look at the three questions at least, and then to share this information with anyone that you think might be a good fit, that might be interested. It's an opportunity, and I just appreciate having this space to
Thank you.
provide information.
Thank you, Guadalupe. I deeply appreciate it. And also me, I want to tell you that I'm honored to be in your presence, because as a leader, you've learned so much. And I feel that I have done a terrible job learning from you. So now that I know some of the things you've done, you'll see a lot more emails from me. But the work you do with the Port of Seattle is incredible. And thank you to all our viewers. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, this is a good time for you to do that, and give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can know that we were here. But really, I want you to know that there's more information. If you look in the comments, I'm going to pin the link to this grant so that those who are watching can check it out. And also we will share a blog post. Stella is working on a blog post that we are going to share in the next 2 or 3 hours, with all these links for the economic recovery grant. And also with a link to the environmental, program grant offered by the Port of Seattle. I want to thank you again, Guadalupe. Have a nice rest of your day. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze.
You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle.